to notice what is real and what is thought, right? What is real and what is thought? And if you don't know what thought is, if thought feels real to you, that is a delusion.
Are you listening?
This is the Rob Scott Show.
Damn.
I mean, really, like, if we're not trying to change the world, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Rob Scott Show. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, you have a great background behind you, Rob. City
like
lights
it?
there.
City lights, is it looking good tonight?
I guess that's terrible podcasting, but for our
For the
listeners
audio,
only.
Yeah, the audio. Yeah, if you're not watching.
Rob's got a great city view of Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's pretty tonight. It's like overcast, but it looks beautiful. Okay, so this episode, I really want to talk about what is reality. Like, what is reality? And there's a reason why. I'm going to tell a story about somebody in a little while. This is not my entire thinking on reality, but I'm going to call out one little miss that we do with reality that I think might be helpful for people. It seemed to be helpful for this person. So
Awesome.
I was out to dinner with somebody I'm really close with, and we were having a lot of fun. And she was talking about her future, right? And so she was actually getting a little anxious about the world, right? So just imagine in your own life, there are times when you're worried about the future. There's difficult things coming up, right? And so she was going through describing to me like how difficult these things were. And I kept trying to call her back to how wonderful the dinner was, right? And but she was going, look, I've got to fix this thing, and I've got to pass this test, and then I'm going to have to get a job in this field, and like, you don't understand, I've got kids, I've got all this stuff. And she ended up looking at me and listing all these things, and she's way out in the future. Like, if the test doesn't go well, and if she doesn't get the job, like, what if there are no jobs by the time I get there, right? There's all this different stuff. And then she looks at me and she's just like, and that's just reality. That's just reality. And in that moment, it was really, really funny to me, right? So I want to honor the part of that feels like reality to people, right? I realize she does have kids. She does have a need for a job coming up. She is worried about the test. Like, none of that is a lie. None of that is not real. But it's not real in the fact that, like, it's all in her head in that moment, right? Like, none of that stuff is going on in reality at all. What is actually real was the delicious meal in front of her, the company that was right there, the air on her skin, right? The music that was playing in the restaurant. There's like, that's what reality is. Okay. And so very often we are getting lost in thought, and we are giving these fascinating ideas, overwhelming ideas, anxious ideas, so much credit and calling them reality, and they're not reality at all, right? They are only thoughts. They are only these things. Now, the structures underneath that, she does have kids, but she didn't have kids with her in that moment. Like, in that moment, there are no kids, right? There's no kid that needs anything. There's nothing going on there. She is going to try and pass this test, but there's nothing to do about that right now. So she's leaving this moment to go into not really the future, but a fantasy about the future. And so our fantasies are quite literally the least real thing, right? They're only in our own mind. They're not even really shareable in any way, right? They're not something that you can really have somebody else even meet you there, right? So in the 7.5 billion of us walking around, we've all got our own personal, subjective reality going on. And then there's reality out here that we're trying to share, right? And kind of meet in. And so I just think that's a really interesting distinction. And it may seem overly simple to some. It may seem very weird to others. But
well, I love the simplicity of it, because I mean, it is, you're like, the way that you told it, and then, you're with her, and I'm like, oh, you're pulling thoughts out of my own head, the spiral, the mental spiral. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, that's not reality. And then you're like, or then that's just my reality. And you're like, that's actually not at all reality.
It's exactly what is not your reality, right? It's exactly not your reality in the moment. It's only thinking.
Yeah, and I think I love that, and I think that's super interesting, because what first came to my mind when you were telling that story is, okay, the mental, like, it's my mental reality, it's the reality of my thoughts, and then my next thought was then, how thought feels really real to us, and I think this is where it gets a little nuanced to me, from the simple of, like, I'm eating dinner versus, like, I'm thinking about something, is that our thoughts can create, like, real feelings that are real. They can create racing heart, panic, anxiety, sweaty palms, or tears, or, flushed face if you're mad. Like, it can create real sensations without being
Real at all.
reality, so like that kind of nuance
So
part of
it's a huge skill of being a human, is the fact that we can model the world and we can learn from that, right? We can actually imagine what it is to burn our hand on a stove and then choose not to touch the stove. Whereas if we didn't have that imaginative quality, we'd have to touch the stove to learn about the burning part, right? Now, a lot of us do that anyway when we're kids, but we don't have to. Actually, you can learn about things and never ever go experiencing them. So this is like the power, one of the huge powers of thought. It's this modeling quality. The cost of that to us is when we can't discern when we're modeling or not. So using your mind as a modeling tool, right? So placing your thought on something and using it as a tool is a proper use of your mind. Being lost in thought and, what insanity looks like or what a panic attack looks like is you're actually freaking out about something that, may not be real at all. Now, I know there's physical aspects of a panic attack, and that's not exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about that psychological quality of feeling like something is real when it's really only a thought.
Yeah. And I mean, I 100% know that this is not where you're going with this, but I'm going to kind of take it here, is that your mind is a tool. And I think of like having a really nice car, like a really, six figure kind of car. And that it drives, it's like it goes the same as any other car, but like there's a level of like how to manage having a car that nice, and like how to keep the finish clean, and like how, what oil to use and what gas to put in it. And you often say, like, we don't have the tools. We're not always given the tools or taught the way to manage our mind. And so unlike a really nice car, we all have a mind, and we all start with the mind from zero. Like, we don't have to wait till 16 to get our license, or, till adulthood where we get that promotion, we can go buy that something nice thing where we've worked our way up to it, right? Like, we're born already with this like thinking machine that's in our head and no manual for it. And so, going back to what you were saying, that, this sounds simple, right? Like, what's reality? What's real? Your thoughts feel real. Are you managing them? It's not. It's actually not simple.
I love that. So sure. And it's pretty simple, really, like, like you can break it down to, and this is just a useful model where, thinking is imagination, and then there's reality that's here, right? So your senses are a direct connection to the real world that's right here. And not understanding the distinction or paying too much attention to the distinction of when you're thinking versus when you're experiencing is something that is going to leave you mentally potentially confused, overwhelmed, etc. Right? That distinction, like, so the manual for thinking that is missing. Step one is realizing that there is a difference between thought and experience. Okay, so we can have an experience and very quickly we begin thinking about it. People that don't realize that distinction between the experience itself and the thought about it do not have a mind that is aware of itself in any sense, right? So our company is called Fundamental Shift. The fundamental shift is this move of becoming self-aware in a way where you can see how your mind is moving around. And this is something that you're capable of, right? Now, you could have brain damage, or you could have you could be mentally challenged in some way where maybe not everybody can do this for sure. But to the grand majority of people that are capable of listening to this and care to listen to this, you can do this. This is something that you can do. You may not do it as well as your neighbor or whatever, but you can grow this skill and this ability. And it's truly a skill to notice what is real and what is thought, right? What is real and what is thought? And if you don't know what thought is, if thought feels real to you, that is a delusion. That is, and if that's bad, it ends up causing a lot of suffering in you. At the worst end of that, that is, insanity. That becomes really, really insane. Now, am I calling everybody insane? No, that's a spectrum. You can be pretty functional, but I watch people all the time being kind of insane in the moment because they're treating their thoughts as if they're reality. And your thoughts are not reality. Your thoughts are your thoughts. right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, so the tool is simple, but I guess I'm gonna keep digging.
Oh, you're
in.
still back on whether it's simple or not.
I'm
Okay,
gonna dig in
fantastic.
more with you.
Cool.
Well, because I just kind of had an epiphany. Right? Yes, if you're a self-actualized person in any way, or you're an adult, or you have a mature brain, then yeah, that's a simple concept to grasp. It's a simple move to do. But is this not childhood? Is this not the idea that your thoughts are not real and your thoughts aren't like the reality that you live in? Is that not the kid that has the nightmare and then he can't sleep because he really thinks monsters are in his closet, or the heart sick tween who's like, no, my heart's, I'll never find love again. Like, this is something that we spend at least, I'll argue, the first 15 years of our life not doing well. And then we get to this point where it's like, oh, it's just a simple move. It's like your thoughts are thoughts in this reality.
Wait, 15 years? I'm suggesting that almost nobody does it ever.
I'm giving someone the credit of the capability to be self-actualized by say 16.
Yeah, but I'm suggesting that almost nobody does this ever, right? Almost all average human beings are lost in thought constantly. And I'm not saying that they can't discern to some degree that they're thinking or they're not thinking or whatever, but they are believing they're thinking very, very often, very, very consistently. And so step one to a mind manual would be to have the recognition to break up with believing your thoughts, for one, relegate them to these are just thoughts. And so here's what's not simple. If you can't do this at all, this doesn't seem simple at all. It's not simple at all. It's incredibly confusing. What is this guy talking about? I don't get it at all, right? So you're going to win that argument. It is not simple to almost anybody out there because they probably don't know how to do it or understand it. What I'm trying to say is that it is simple once you understand. If I can explain it to you and you can get it, you'll go, oh, that's simple. I got it. Okay. Right. And it's a game changer, right? It's something that you can do very, very quickly. That's a game changer. If you can't do it, I'm going to suggest you're lost in thought. You're lost in thought. And if that's working out for you, that may not suck. Chances are it does, though. Chances are it sucks pretty bad because you don't have a real path or understanding of the switch to actually be present and be here and really be in reality, quite honestly. So if your thoughts are set up to be overwhelming or scattered, or your unconscious is serving up, low self-esteem things, or I'm not good enough, or whatever the thing is, you're living in that and believing all that. That's your suffering. And then you're putting on a fake, face for Stacy, hey, no, fantastic. It's all great. And then you're going home upset by yourself. I wish people knew me and blah, 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 and then we're thinking about that. I mean, it's lost in thought, right? And so this foundational difference between thought and experience, we're not even selling it well. It's the game changer. It's the whole thing. You can all of a sudden relegate your thoughts to this incredibly useful, powerful tool for yourself instead of being lost in the labyrinth and the demon of whatever thought's coming next. Oh man, I'm going to get, swept away by that thing, this next upset, this next drama, this next piece of whatever. And when you get with somebody who can tell the difference, you will have them not overreact to situations. You will have them not be as afraid of anything, right? Stuff comes up and it's maybe that'll happen. I don't know. We'll have to see. But right now I'm fine, right? And what you'll find is that almost all the time, you're fine. Almost all the time. Almost all the time, everything's working just perfectly. Now, your preferences may not be happening. Your desires, your attachments may not be happening.
Yeah.
Right? The things you're attached to may not be occurring for you, which is a bummer. But what you're not getting is that you're lost in a thought about it and you're attached and you're not in reality. You're not even appreciating that you're safe, that you're okay, that, the wind feels good on your face, whatever, the stuff that's actually going on because you've let that portion of your brain atrophy and you've got this hyperactive thinking thing that you can't even get out of, right? So some of the base moves in some of our base systems, the things that we share with people are this power move of understanding, thinking, and experience in a different way. And when you can be an experience, that's where joy lives. That's where happiness is. That's where presence is. That's where real listening occurs. That's where you can stop the delusion of the thoughts that are oh God, what do they think of me? And, oh no, what's going to happen next Tuesday? And, oh my gosh, I have to give that speech and that just doesn't stop. Right. And then what's really funny is when somebody kind of lands all the way back to, but that's reality. You don't get it, man. You don't know what's happening and all the things I have and all that stuff. And it's like, whoa. Sip it, get that, come here, right? Like, shh. And then what's your food taste like? What's your butt feel like in the seat? Look at how nice that server is to us. Like, it's all beautiful. And that's coming back to reality. Then from there, we can attack the future things that may be coming or whatever, but we can be grounded and actually in reality, right? Holding hands, walking down the street, whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no. And I agree. We didn't sell it well, but I also don't think there's much to sell because I would, and I know you'd agree, the capability to manage your mind, even if it's not, the most perfect, but in any sense to have some grip over what's going on is like the most important thing that you can do. Just like listen to the past, however many episodes of our podcast, but like every single area of personal development or things that people struggle with or things that people like, it all comes back to managing your attention and your thoughts. And like, this obviously seems like Rob's like, yeah, no, duh, I built my life on this, but just being somewhat new to the podcasting space and having to actually dialogue about this with you repeatedly. I mean, it's true. It really everything that any client wants, anyone who's like, hey, I need help with this, it comes down to like that one thing. And it is the most important thing that you can do. Not even necessarily through us, but though I very biasly think that we do it the best, but there are like varying degrees and ways to work on this, but you have to work on it because
it's so funny. The coaching that I do, and I've got tons of moves, right? There's other stuff I do for sure. But where I want to begin with somebody is I want somebody to describe their situation to me. And all I'm listening for is like, what are they attached to that they can't see they're attached to? What's the thought that they're holding on that gives them a ton of meaning that's causing suffering for them? What's the thing? And then I look magical when I decouple some of those for them. Like I go, well, that one doesn't really matter like you thought. And that thing isn't that. And they go, oh, like I'm actually free. Right. And it's like, yeah. And you were free before you got here. You just didn't realize what was a thought and what wasn't. Right. So here's the shortcut, guys. The reason you'll never, ever need coaching or therapy or anything again, you're free. It's all fantastic. Right. Tell that story to yourself. Realize that it's beautiful. I mean, really, I know I'm being sarcastic a little bit, but your problems, there are legitimate problems. If somebody's literally punching you in your face, that's an issue, right? There are things that in reality are happening that are really bad and need other attention. There are things we need to plan for, to some degree, but the grand majority of stuff that we're calling problems and that we're worried about are psychological attachments and thoughts that have, gotten out of control for us that we can absolutely let go, change, reframe, move around. But if we don't have the ability to realize even what a thought is and what an experience is, or what a different thought would be, or how we can move all this stuff around, then you have no mental mastery. Then it's going to be very difficult to be happy, productive, effective, whatever. Right?
Right. So Rob, tell our listeners, what are some ways that we can get better at this? Assuming there's someone who doesn't even know that they're attached to a reality that's not real.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big famous ones that are out there, any kind of mindfulness practice really, really helps. And all that's happening there, forget what you think meditation is, right? Put it all down. Forget, the history of Buddhism or what. I don't care about any of that stuff. What is happening is you're making a commitment for some period of time to say, wow, my breath is always going on. And we've got our course Back to Breath that people can check out if they want to do that for free. My breath is here. I'm going to set a timer. I don't even care for how long, but just this amount of time, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to see what happens when I put my mind, my attention on my breath. There's a physical sensation there. The second you do that, you're in the present. You're actually in reality as soon as you do that, right? You're noticing something that's really happening in reality. And then you're going to notice that your mind starts up and you go out to a thought. The only practice is to drop that and bring it, meaning your attention, bring it back to breath. And you're going to wrestle with that a little bit. Those are doing reps. Those are doing mental reps to realize, wow, okay. But what the bigger meta thing that's going on there is you're realizing like, oh, that's just another thought. There's
Right.
my thinking again. And here's reality. There's another thought. Here's reality. There's another thought. And what happens, and this is, I don't think, taught well enough in the traditional teachings of this in Buddhism and all those things, but way earlier in your practice of that, you can have this discovery of like, oh, this mechanism is, I'm being pulled into imagination, and I don't have to believe in the imagination. It's just another thought. And as soon as I see that it's just another thought, I can either bring it back to breath, or I can have another thought. Like, I don't have to get captured there, because so much of your suffering is a thought that you're attached to that's creating an emotion that feels bad. Sally doesn't like me. Oh no. Right. And so I'm just lost in Sally doesn't like me. I can't stop thinking about it. I might stop for a minute, but then it comes back. Sally still, oh God, here we are, whatever. Right. Or I'll never be rich. I'll never be rich. Like I'm horrible. Right. These are all just thoughts. They're all just thoughts. And so that is one move to come back. We've got a better training than that, or a more, it goes into it a little bit more deeply, called Hacking Happy. That's another way that people can do it. But if you pick up a mindfulness thing, that's definitely step one. Maybe step 0 before step 1 is just the realization that there is thought and there is experience. They're not the same thing. And it's really useful to start noticing the difference between the two and start putting down thought to come back to reality, to experience, to sensation, on a more regular basis. And you will feel more grounded. You'll feel happier. You'll feel more connected. And you will be less lost in the 10,000 things or the labyrinth of the mind that can get so tricky for so many of us.
Yeah. I mean, I literally have nothing to add, because I think that was like the perfect, that was great.
Then
Absolutely.
We'll wrap it up there, baby.
We'll
That's
wrap it up there.
All right,
yeah. Where can people, if they did want to do Hacking Happy and Back to Breath, maybe let's tell us.
Yeah, the best way to do that is go to fundamentalshift.com, and you can check out what we have there. You get actually access to all our programs there if you want to check it out. And for other stuff, you can go to robscott.com. Those 2 places.
Awesome. All right.
All right. Be kind to yourself and everybody else. We'll talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.